Morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us for our first meeting first work session after break. I'll get us started with the public charge for our work session. The Board of Commissioners asks its members and residents to conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the board and fellow residents. At any time, should any member of the board or any resident fail to observe this public charge, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until that individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until such time that a genuine commitment to the public charge is observed. Commissioner Valentine, would you like to read the land acknowledgement?
As we convene for the Durham County Commissioners meeting, it's crucial to recognize the painful truth of history. We stand on the stolen ancestral lands of the Catawba, the Eno, the Occaneechi, the Shakori, and the Tuscarora peoples, whose deep connection to this land predates our arrival. We acknowledge with humility the unjust displacement and violence that occurred, leading to the dispossession of indigenous peoples from their homelands. Their resilience in the face of such adversity is a testament to their strength and spirit. May we humbly honor the ancestors and elders of these nations, both past and present, by committing to ourselves to fostering understanding, healing, and justice for all who inhabit this land. Let us walk forward together with open hearts, acknowledging the past and embracing a future guided by compassion, respect, and unity.
Thank you, Commissioner Valentine. Well, now we have resident comments, but there were no individuals who signed up. So I will move us on to consent agenda and pass it on to Manager Hager.
Good morning. I will read the consent items, and if there are questions, please let us know and we will answer them. 250193, award contract for Bliss Products and Services, Inc., in the amount of $246,815.76 to replace 3 sections of bleacher seating at the Durham County Memorial Stadium, and that's as a result of RFP 25023. The next one is approval of budget ordinance amendment number 26 BCC 007, appropriating $1.5 million of general fund balance to support the Durham Affordable Housing Loan Fund. And just a quick reminder, we started this process back in the fall with the budget amendment, had conversations with the board over a course of almost a year to help bolster the Affordable Housing Loan Fund, which is a collaboration between the Self-Help Credit Union, or Self-Help, and Durham County, the City of Durham, and Duke University's Office of Community Affairs. These funds will leverage over $15 million in new senior loans to provide $30 million for the fund. And I hope I have explained that correctly, and we do have someone from Self-Help here to answer questions if they are.
Manager Hager, for that one, what is, I know you've talked about it in the past, what is the dollar conversion rate we've talked about? Like for every dollar we put into the fund, it returns X amount?
So for every dollar we put in the fund, we return $4. So it's a tremendous investment. And to the partners who worked on this, again, I'm speaking on it, but it was Christy Rowley, Perry Manns, Jay Gibson, and myself, and also J.J. Froelich. I may have messed up your name, my apologies. And so, all right, the next one is approval of a purchase of goods contract with Batteries of North Carolina and SWS LLC in the amount of $331.78 for the Sheriff's Office vehicle equipment. This is a budgeted expense that accompanies the costs associated with procuring cars that we approved in the budget. The next one is 25. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I had a question. Just wondering, out of curiosity, with the Sheriff's Office vehicles, with what happened with Tropical Storm Chantal, and we know that Carborough's entire fleet was destroyed. is that, with them having to replace their fleet, is that going to put like a backlog on other cities and counties who've had to order vehicles?
I will say right now the supply chain for vehicles in general has shifted for various reasons. And what happens is, from a procurement standpoint, we try to purchase a certain number of vehicles so that we can keep our fleet current. When we run into those supply chain issues, we try to manage as best as we can. So it may or may not impact their specific scenario, may or may not impact our procurement depending upon what types of vehicles they had. But across the country, it is an issue, and we've been dealing with supply chain issues for several years. For an example, you may have seen in a recent article about the fire engine that was purchased by the city. I imagine it probably took at least 3 years for it to come to fruition because of the backlog. So we're hopeful we can still get these timely, but it still will probably be closer to at least a year, if not longer, before they arrive. Great question. The next one is 250391, approval of fiscal years 25-26 Governor Highway Safety Program grant funding resolution.
Yes, I was wondering, do we get, because this is for a specific purpose of reducing things like fatalities and accidents and things like that, do we ever, and because we're providing 75% of the local match, do we get any type of reporting back from the Office of the Sheriff on this?
As a part of the report, there is reporting that goes along with it, and so we can make sure that's shared with the board.
Okay. Because I noticed in the county newsletter, your newsletter, it referenced I think a quarterly, I don't know if it was quarterly report from the Office of the Sheriff.
Okay.
Has that been shared with staff or with our board?
We can share that with the board.
Okay,
Yes,
so, okay. Yeah, because I did not see that.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can do that.
County Manager, maybe it'd be a good idea that we invite the sheriff in to make a reporting in person. I think he would be open to that.
Great.
Yep.
We can do that as well, yes.
And will this highway safety program be impacted by, I just learned this weekend from Councilmember Caballero that the city is moving towards, for like small fender benders and other types of like small traffic infractions, like not having to have an armed officer on the scene when like for like a small fender bender, all you really need is the police report to provide to insurance. So with that, because that's the city's doing that, how does that impact this program if there's like a fender bender on the highway or something?
I would have to refer to the sheriff's office staff on that, and it depends upon. Sure.
I was thinking a lot of times, I had a car bender out in the county, the state highway patrol responded. Like if it's out on the interstate or things like that, county roads, it's the state highway patrol, but that's what happened to me a few months back, so I just wanted that clarification too, if it's the state highway patrol.
My apologies, ma'am. I've got a slight ear infection.
Oh, no problem.
And I did not hear your initial question.
Yeah, I was just saying, so I just learned this weekend that the city is actually moving towards, like, if there's small, like, accidents that there's no safety risk, everyone's safe, that instead of sending, like, an armed officer, they have, like, another type of responder going that just does the report that's needed for insurance. I was just wondering, does that play any role into like the highway safety patrol of like within Durham, of if the city has this program, will the highway, like if it's the state troopers or the county sheriff's office, will they also potentially follow that same model, or would it have to be its own change?
Yes, ma'am. The North Carolina State Highway Patrol responds to all accidents outside of the city per general statute, and that's a question that I can't answer for the Highway Patrol. We do write reports if it's in a parking lot or a public vehicular area, but that may be something we would entertain looking at. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the next one is 250402. This is approve a contract award to Froland and Robinson, Inc. for professional engineering services for materials testing for Chin Page Park, Slater lift stations, and pipeline construction for the Utilities Division in the amount of $124,913, not to exceed an amount of $138,000. Okay, the next one is the approval of the fiscal year 26 Durham Annual Transit Work Plan, Global Operating and Capital Agreements.
This one, I did get a request from Bike Durham for our next joint city-county, if we could have a presentation update for the community explaining like the county transit tax dollars of how we decide projects that get funded out of that fund and the process for that. Just an informational presentation on that.
Okay, we can do that. It will not be for not the August 12th, but the following. Okay, fantastic. Okay, the next one is 250426, approval of budget ordinance amendment number 26 BCC 008, cooperative extension to recognize $66,364 from Welcome Baby Smart Start Grant Program. The next one is 250428, adopt the emergency services resolution for the 2025 Eno Haw Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Commissioner Jacobs.
I appreciate that plan did get sent to us, or I was not able to open it.
Okay.
Were you able to open it? I know it's very large, but I don't know if there's a link that we could read it online or something like that. Personally, I don't like to approve a resolution for a plan if I haven't at least looked at it.
Sure.
I also wanted to say that this is ironic that we are approving this because the Eno Haw River Basin is the river basin that just flooded with Chantal. So it just reinforces how important it is to have a hazard mitigation plan. And I guess one of my questions is, I'm sure this plan was developed before Chantal, and just wondering, what the process might be now, looking at the information of what we've learned from this recent event, how this might impact any changes or modifications or whatever to the plan.
Yeah. Good morning, Dwayne Brinson, Assistant County Manager. I'll invite Chief Schrader up to help with explaining the changes that are in this renewal. I'll also say that I do have a link that I can send the board if it was.
Okay, that would be great.
If it was difficult opening, we have a link that we can send you that gets you to the document. But as far as the changes, I'll let Chief Schrader talk about those. But this was developed well before Chantal, and this is a renewal. So there's just a number of changes for this multi-county plan that we're asking the board to consider.
Hi, good morning. I'm Elizabeth Schrader, Chief of Emergency Management for the city and county. So the hazard mitigation plan, you'll notice when you're able to open the link that the plan was dated back in May. So that's when it was completed, which unfortunately was prior to Chantal. We have recently just transitioned into our long-term recovery from Chantal with our initial after-action review scheduled later this week. I do anticipate that this plan will be reviewed kind of once we get a little further along in the recovery phases. We've just completed both the IA and PA preliminary damage assessments locally for our county. So this plan unfortunately does not address it does address flooding. It does not address the historical flooding that we recently received from Chantal and will be reviewed. This plan typically is reviewed on an annual basis and then updated every 5 years, but there will be an opportunity to incorporate lessons learned on a sooner date if required. Do you have any other specific questions about the plan?
Well, in general, I'm wondering, like, was Tobin Freed involved in this?
I believe so. I know that this is a regional plan. There were 14 municipalities within 4 different counties that participated. We did have extensive participation, both from city stakeholders as well as county stakeholders. I can certainly pull a list of the individuals that were part of it. I can't think off the top of my head right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm our liaison to the Environmental Affairs Board, and one of the issues that they're looking at is the city and the county having resiliency and sustainability plans. So I just think that's an important part of mitigation is, the county doesn't at this point have an adopted resiliency plan, but that is something that Tobin and her is working on. On the county side, I know that city staff are working on that too, but I think as the county looks to the future and things like our land use ordinances and things like that, infrastructure, we all know that that's what we have to be focused on is what, mitigation is actually what are we doing to build differently so that we can be prepared for the impact of things like flooding, which we just saw.
Certainly. I'll be happy to pull those names and send them to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 25. I'm sorry. No, I'll go for that. Okay, all right. 250430, and there is a request approval of $127,050 for the contract with Student U to administer the Durham County Community Schools Program.
First and foremost, I'm really glad to see the community schools program still being in force. I was a part of a team of people to help bring it to Durham through the National Education Association. So when I saw this, I was like, yes, we're going to continue to do this. But I had a couple of questions. One, because I noticed in the fiscal year budget that we just passed, we were giving, I believe, money to DPS around this, or is this the same pot of money that is being given? Is it split? I'm just trying to figure out, now that it's being moved to Student U, like, how's that working?
So it's the same amount of money, and what happens is that the contract will be written with Student U, but it's for the community schools program. So we have some additional initiatives that are that way. They may have a different agency that may facilitate the financial component of it, but this is how this works.
So is the money going to DPS and then going to Student U? Because like I said, I saw that line item, maybe I'm confused, but I saw a line item in the school's budget for an amount, and I know that's how it worked out before, so yeah.
So if, so the contract will be with Student U, and they will pass the dollars to the foundation, if that makes sense. And so the schools may have a similar allocation for them, but that would go directly to either Student U or the foundation.
And I just wanted to say that if it's all possible, if we could get like a yearly report about how the community schools program is going,
Okay.
because haven't really heard anything. I knew this was happening because there was money received from the federal government to implement the community schools program in various counties, but really haven't heard about what's happening overall.
Okay.
And since we're using county funds, just to hear just a report about how things are going at those particular schools here in Durham. So thank you.
That'll be great.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Commissioner Burton's comment. In the scope of work on the third page, near the bottom, there are 2 bullet points. One that says, develop and share impact data with Durham County Commissioners as requested, complete regular reporting as required by Durham County Commissioners. And I think we need to clarify that scope of work. To be clear that annually. And as a matter of fact, this year in our budget work sessions, I don't believe we got an annual report from them, and we usually do get one for the fiscal year. So if we could get the FY, I guess it'd be 24-25
Okay.
report. They usually share data with us. So we
Yes,
need,
we can definitely get
okay.
that to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, and this concludes our consent agenda items. Now, there may be some scheduling issues. I did share with the Alliance that it would be closer to 10 when they're presented, and we're a little bit ahead of schedule.
Don't jinx it.
And so
then
if
is there,
we can go to the second item, the
Okay.
county grant landscape.
okay.
So we would ask that the public health director and the DSS director come with their teams to share. We have others who are also here that Raina will also share or be on standby for questions. As you know, right now we're all living in a landscape of shifts and change based on the Medicaid and SNAP funding potentially shifting and the state and national levels. I did ask the public health director and the DSS director to share, and I want to make sure that Monica also has a DSS presentation. Okay. If possible, we'd like that one to go first because it does give broader context.
Good morning, Board of County Commissioners and County Manager. Thank you. My name is Maggie Clapp. I'm the Director of DSS. I'm here to present today on the impacts of some of the federal changes to Medicaid and SNAP, which we also refer to as Food and Nutrition Services at DSS. We can go to the next slide. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, so some of the key provisions that we're looking at that could impact us is the added work requirements, limiting the provider taxes, which threaten to end Medicaid expansion unless the General Assembly acts. So the work requirements are going to bring new administrative costs. This is going to, right now, we recertify every year. For some populations of children, it's actually been pushed up to 2 years. So this will be a huge undertaking for us to have to recertify every 6 months, not just for my team, but for the community. I believe this is a way, in all honesty, to get people off of Medicaid, because a lot of times during the recertification process, If you don't have the right forms, of course, that can delay it, and then you get put off Medicaid and you have to reapply. So in order for this to happen, we all know about the trigger law, which could come into effect. So in order to stop this, the legislature would have to enact technical correction to the hospital provider tax funding formula. So currently is at 6%. I believe it's going to be going down to 3.5% for expanded Medicaid states. It would change the trigger law and appropriate state funds to support these costs, and change the trigger law and authorize some other financing mechanism to support administrative costs for work requirements. So this is only for Medicaid expansion. If Medicaid expansion is eliminated, the work requirements and the recertifications would not apply. This will result in about 671,476 people losing insurance coverage if the legislature does not act. Here's a snapshot of what that would look like in Durham. So in July of 2025, we had 76,482 people enrolled in Medicaid. July 2025, of those, about 17,000 Medicaid expansion. So if the legislature does not act, you're looking at about 17,000 people in Durham alone becoming uninsured. So some of the federal changes to Medicaid, as I talked about, so one of the ways that the state has been able to have expanded Medicaid and to fund that is with a provider tax. So again, as I said, the federal government, it looks as though they just really want to eliminate Medicaid expansion, because again, this provider tax reduces it from a 6% cap down to 3.5%, but only for expansion states. So again, this is only for expansion states, along with the recertification work requirement only applies to expansion if we keep it. While the bill did include $50 billion for rural health care, that does not look to be enough from current assessments coming out. And out of our economy in North Carolina, it would mean over 10 years, $22.5 billion will be taken out of our economy. As we talked about the work requirements, it adds a Medicaid expansion work requirement for ages 19 to 64. You either have to do work or approved activities, community service, job training, or schools for 80 plus hours a month. Parents and guardians with kids 14 or younger can be exempt. This starts by December 31st, 2026, but states can ask for a 2-year delay through December if making a good faith effort. I'm hopeful that North Carolina will ask for that in order to be able to get us prepared. Verification is required within 1 month of enrollment and at each new renewal, now every 6 months. Again, that's going to be key for us with our community partners if we keep Medicaid expansion, to ensure that everyone knows exactly what to bring during that recertification so that they stay on Medicaid and do not lose that coverage due to timeliness issues with documentation. 6-month eligibility determinations. States must check if people still qualify for Medicaid every 6 months, and this policy again starts December 31st. And as we know, this will lead to more work and delays at our offices and people losing coverage. So a lot of people talk about the error rates with SNAP. We are at 10.33, I believe, in the state of North Carolina. There's only 8 states that actually are under the 6% that met this in 2024. And those states are South Dakota, Nebraska, I believe Oklahoma, Idaho. So very different states from the bigger states of North Carolina, Florida, New York, and California. It's going to be very difficult after a few meetings with the state for us to be able to get that error rate under that due to our county system and also just the makeup of the county, the state, and how many people we certify. And so that error rate is going to probably be around 10% moving forward. Due to that, if we have an error rate over that 6%, as you can see, we have to pay a certain cost share. The cost share is going to be based on error rates from the 3 years prior, so you're looking at around that 10%. States with error rates over 13.5 would have a delay, but we are not near there at all. So the North Carolina cost share would be $420 million per year based on current error rate. And so just for Durham County for fiscal year 2025, our 15% share would have been approximately $11.5 million. Currently, in Durham, we are providing SNAP benefits to 32,897 participants. So with that error rate to keep SNAP, that means the legislature has to come back and say they will fund approximately $420 million per year. This is in addition to the administrative cost that I'll go to in the next slide, which is 16, I believe, for the state. So overall, it's $436 million the state would have to come up with in order for us to continue to provide SNAP. Currently, as you know, the federal government pays 100% of benefit costs. So this is what it looks like right now. So right now, we get reimbursed 50% of our administrative costs for SNAP. It's going to now go down in October of 2026 to 25%. So as I said, that means the share for the state, for their state staff, is $16 million. So that's in addition to the $420 million. North Carolina County administrative costs are likely to increase by $67 million. What does that look like for Durham? It looks like if you look at, we base this on last year. So last year, we had a total of a little over 10 million. We got back from that 5.2, so that was 50%. If the 25% next year is in effect, it would, if we have the same numbers, we would be losing or having to come up with on our own 2.6 million, a little over 2.6 million. So that's what it's going to look like when it drops from 50% to 25%. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Commissioner Jacobs?
Thank you, Maggie. I have a few questions. One is going back to that slide around Medicaid expansion. Do we have data related to, in terms of, it was earlier in your slide. Yeah, that one.
Oh, this one. Okay.
That one. In terms of who Medicaid expansion, do we have a demographic breakdown of the age group of those folks?
I can see if we do. I don't know if the state has taken that out for just expansion, but I can check on that.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful because then we'll also have a better idea of who are we really talking about. I mean, it's my understanding, I'm just guessing that it's adults, working age adults, but so that we know, I think it's going to be important for us to understand the population in Durham who's really at risk. And also, if you could provide us, like these numbers are so overwhelming. And if we could have an idea of like the range, like best case scenario, worst case scenario, and also in terms of, I'm wondering about a strategy around how do we communicate this to our federal representatives and our state representatives to really filter it down, like exactly what we need to advocate for. For instance, we need the trigger law to be changed in the state. Like that's like really clear asks. I know that the state, the DHHS has laid out those different options, like here are the things that really need to change. But because we are going to need to be educating the community and also our representatives about what are the clear fixes for this, because it's overwhelming for us, but this is going to be catastrophic for every single county in North Carolina, every single county. But I think helping us understand the full impact.
So yeah, I would say with Medicaid right now, the biggest thing is to work on that trigger law. That's what's standing in our way right now. If we proceed in this direction, then we will lose Medicaid expansion in the next couple of years.
So it seems like that is one of the biggest things that we all need to be talking about and pushing for right now, because that's an easy fix. The General Assembly can change the law. They can do it.
Yep.
And I don't know, in your slides, is this the end of the Medicaid?
No. Yes, that was all we had on the Medicaid.
Okay, so related also to Medicaid, I I would like to hear more about what is the strategy around recertifications, because Maggie and I are both on the Lincoln Community Board, Health Board, and we had a retreat on Saturday, and we had our expert, she's from DC, came to speak to us, and one of her recommendations, and I was taking notes, she said that that we should be, as a community, working on the state allowing on-site eligibility and how to bolster eligibility assistance within our community. And so, in other words, the system that they're putting in place is being intentionally made to be difficult for people. Not only the work requirements, but also every 6 months. How do we create our own infrastructure in Durham to beat this system?
So the one thing that we're doing is we're going to start training some of our staff to be universal. So what that means is right now we have some staff that just do applications and some staff that just do recertifications. So right now what we are doing is we have identified 2 teams that we're going to start training and soon. Clearly we're not going to know what the end outcome is going to be, but we want to be prepared. So we're going to start training these staff for universal, meaning that they can do both. That way, when the recertification comes, we have more staff that are able to do that. As far as messaging, I'm still working on a communication plan with the PIO and Cynthia on how we make sure that we get the communication out there of what exactly is needed. And as you know, Lincoln is already able to have eligibility on site. We have 2 staff there. And I have talked to them about if there's additional staff that is needed, we're happy to do that. And so I know she's also dedicating some staff to her as well to this when it's time to make sure that they can go in and help people get the documentation together. And it really has to start from day one when you are first given Medicaid, because 6 months comes really quick. So you need to have all of that in place. But those are some of the things that we're doing.
And what about Duke Health? Do they have the eligibility?
Yes, we have 2 staff dedicated to Duke, and we also have a staff also at the homeless shelter here, I think a couple of days a week.
Okay. And in terms of what else could help you? I mean, I'm just thinking about communication channels. The city, they have a monthly water bill that people get. Durham Public Schools, has access to communicating with a lot of families. I think we need to have an all hands on deck approach.
I agree. Yeah, any ideas are welcome. And I agree, it is going to take the entire community, because anywhere that we can get that information out is going to be very, very helpful.
And I want to highlight on that last piece that Maggie actually just presented last week, was it in Jigger? Former Mayor Steve Schewel, as well as Allison Dorsey from Duke, have brought together a Durham benefits working group. And so we have Maggie, who is serving on this, as well as Greg Merrow is one of the co-chairs. And then there's other folks, Rashana Parker is on there. I think there was several people from Durham County and the city who are coming together, and there's representatives from Duke Health. Oh, Director Jenkins is on there too. Duke Health and other benefit providers and private providers who are coming together to say, like, there's so many benefits that's already funded. How do we get access to our Durham County residents? And how do we integrate and get our systems to be communicating with each other to make sure that if someone is eligible for programs and Duke Health knows that they're eligible, that they're able to communicate that effectively to DSS so that DSS can get them enrolled in programs. So that started, I think you guys have
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and they have working groups now out of that are working on the different areas of benefits.
Yeah,
and is Lincoln a part of that too? And Veteran Services?
Yeah.
I believe they are.
Yeah, I
it's
believe they
very
are.
comprehensive. I think it's over 136 entities that are represented, or individuals. We can definitely plan for an update with the board or at a joint city-county meeting, because there's representation from Durham Public Schools, North Carolina Central. It's very comprehensive, and the goal is to make sure that to the best that the best coordinated efforts happen, so that we're not leaving money on the table, as just shared, for our residents, because I believe it's about $80 million that was estimated that residents were not taking advantage of for Durham, that were benefits through these different services.
Through federal dollars.
Through
that are already
federal
allocated,
dollars.
yeah.
Well, this sounds like a really key group to help with this strategy around the recertifications and the work requirement.
Yeah, we've already been talking about that, and we have another meeting in a couple of weeks, so we can come back and do an update to the board.
That'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question I think Commissioner Burton does as well. And I was wondering, how can we work, like, obviously all of us here, and especially in Durham County, know these numbers are like significant. I'm thinking about it also in the sphere of like, what is effective messaging and numbers for folks in Raleigh that look at their decision making comes more off of economic benefits to the state, more so than like the economic cost to our residents. So is there a way for us to like take these numbers and put it into into a more broader, like, this is how it's going to impact business in Durham, this is how it's going to impact the economy of North Carolina? Because I feel like even though we significantly care about like the people aspect of it, I feel like when we go to Raleigh and talk to them about it, we need them to know that, you know, North Carolina was just named best state for business in the country. But how does cutting Medicaid and SNAP actually impact that? It's going to take that title away from us, because if we have fewer people with SNAP benefits, they're spending less in the economy, and that's going to drive our businesses down. If we have less access to SNAP, more people are going to be going to the hospital. And how does that put a strain on our hospital systems across, not just in Duke, but our rural hospital systems? So if we can find a way to like conceptualize that with numbers, so that like when we go to Raleigh, we're able to talk to our legislators in a more matter-of-fact way that
Yes,
they tend to listen to more.
Yeah, there's been a lot out there about that. I can send you all because they have broken it down. So when we get to SNAP, and the next slide, so we've had 2 meetings with the state in the past 2 weeks, and I'm going to be honest, it kind of feels like they were preparing us that we might lose SNAP in the state. We started with 3 options in June. We are now down to 2 options per the state. So the one option is the state pays that increased state benefit cost, which is, again, that $420 million plus the $16 million once it drops from 50% reimbursement to 25%. If not, then North Carolina will withdraw from the SNAP program completely. And again, both of these options were gone over the past 2 weeks with the state. And my team and I kind of felt like they were leaning more towards option 2, unfortunately, which makes no sense. About 1.4 million would lose their benefits, and over time it's a 2.8 billion revenue that goes right to our supermarkets. It goes right to the mom and pop grocery stores. So that money goes directly to them. So that is a huge loss for the economy. So again, here we have like 7,000 jobs in North Carolina across grocery, agriculture, manufacturing, and then of course over 500,000 children no longer automatically qualify for school meals because of SNAP. So we can break those numbers down for you more to send. I'll send them to you.
Be great. Thank you. Commissioner Burton?
Yes, thank you. I think that's a good idea about how does it tie into the overall economics of North Carolina, because, you know, it's about, okay, how we are, you know, we were number 1 in business, and how do we, this is a big economic generator, and I think most people just don't think about it in that way, right? So I think that's a really good idea. But the question I had, and I was looking at this number where it's on this slide about the Medicaid snapshot of Durham County, and I was looking at the age group of individuals who receive Medicaid, and 51% of the individuals who receive Medicaid are between the ages of 0 and 18, over half. So they're young people. But then I go down to 21 through 44, that's 25.4%. So to me, that question, I'm thinking in my brain, those are young adults in their prime working years who are going to possibly lose Medicaid. So the question I have is, I wanted to see, okay, like from 21 to 26 or 21 to 30, like which numbers of the individuals are receiving the Medicaid, and possibly the reasons why, because that's just sends something to me. These are young people in their prime who are now possibly are going to lose health benefits. So, and I imagine that would mirror in other counties across the state as well. So if you could pull that, that would be great.
Yeah, I have to check with the state to see if they have the ability to do, if we have the ability to do that, but I'll definitely check on that and get back to you all. Okay, and that was my last slide. So we're going to continue to participate in the state meetings, and I'll continue to let you all know what next steps are, what the talk has been. But right now, that's where we're at. Those are the two options for SNAP, and then if they don't repeal the trigger law, we could lose Medicaid expansion.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Jacobs?
Maggie, have you thought about inviting the delegation to do a brief, you all doing a direct briefing with them? Actually, we used to do that in the past. When I was on the DSS board, we would have a legislative breakfast, actually DSS directly with our delegation to inform them. So it's just something to think about. This issue is so important, and honestly, you all are going to be better equipped to inform them than, because this is so complex. Just something to think about.
No, absolutely.
Commissioner Valentine?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to reiterate some comments that have been made from the dais already by several of my colleagues, the importance for us to move from theory to actually action. It's alarming that our most vulnerable in our community, our children, are at risk of basic subsistence. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention to the body that I work with here that, overnight, the landscape could potentially change. And so I think that we need to be pre-positioned to have conversations about, not what it is, but what to do in light of the changing landscape. So I'm hoping that, we have some additional conversations, but also that we come up with an action plan in the short term to address some of the needs that are going to be impactful on our community, again, particularly as it relates to the most vulnerable in our community, our children.
Thank you all
So much for all of this work, and also I know how much heart y'all put into this every single day, fighting for our residents.
Yeah, this is keeping us up at night. It's going to be detrimental if we don't get this fixed.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Lum, members of the board, County Manager Hager. I'm Dr. Rod Jenkins, Public Health Director. With me today is Deputy Health Director Kristen Patterson and our resident subject matter expert, Rachel Ellich, who is our Nutrition Director. We also have Raina Bunnick, who is our Food Security Coordinator, who can also speak to some of the local impacts as it relates to this. We're just really talking about DINE, and that's our Durham Innovative Nutrition Education Program. That is a benefit from SNAP Ed. SNAP education funds have been used for some 25 plus years to really strengthen our food security network and food education system here in Durham. I'm trying to get to the next slide. again, to do this a lot more good, we certainly have our nutrition expert, Rachel Elledge, with us, who can answer any questions, but I will not put her on the spot. I'll just say, a lot of what Maggie has talked about, of course, directly impacts the work that we do. We know that as it stands right now, if the state does not take action, which it sounds as if with the two options, it's very detrimental. However, we certainly want to do everything we can, and we have presented a number of options to County Manager Hager in order to maintain the robust network and educational apparatus that we've had. But as the slides indicate, 25 years of community connection and impact, working directly with Durham Public Schools. There is a lot that has gone on and a lot that will fall by the wayside if, in fact, these things go away. Not just the educational apparatus, but we've been doing a lot from farmers markets to senior living to you name it. We have touched just about every facet of Durham County. Current state of funding, we know House Bill 1 eliminates SNAP-Ed funding effective October 1st, 2025. There's a loss of $1 million in fiscal 26 funding for our DINE program. It directly impacts 13 positions that will be eliminated, and these are 12 highly qualified, long-tenured positions with Durham County, 12 registered dietitians and 1 processing assistant. We only have 4 county-funded staff that will remain to continue this essential nutrition and education work and to maintain our community partnerships. To stress it more appropriately, unless alternative funding is secured, the DINE program will, in its current form, discontinue after September 30th, 2025. What will our community lose? As indicated, lots of early childhood education, lots of community partnerships, programs at 19 community sites, lots of technical support, DINE in elementary and middle schools, which has been essential and critical because we know that if you are educated properly and you exercise proper nutrition, that is medicine, simply stated. This slide, which I thank the team for putting together, says it all. These are all the partnerships, probably not all, but the majority of the partnerships that we have. From Lincoln to Durham Public Schools to food banks to NC Central, Black farmers markets, colleges, universities, we have touched it all over the past 25 years. So again, the future of DINE, it just continues to land and be shaped by programming and partnerships. So again, we have the 4 county funded positions, which we're very grateful for. We also have looked inside our own coffers, some excess funds that Durham has, approximately $200,000, to see whether or not we can do whatever we can collaborate to maintain it. We have put in a direct request for additional funding, and then of course we're also seeking outside funding, grants, partnerships, charitable foundations. But we certainly know that that's not necessarily going to do it, but we're going to try. Some more pictures for you. And again, we certainly thank you for your continued support of our DINE team. At this time, we would open it up for any questions you may have.
Commissioner Vice Chair Dr. Lee.
Thank you for this, Dr. Jenkins. I appreciate it. I'm trying to process the idea of like how much funding would it take to continue this program? Like, I know you were talking about alternative sources. Just big picture, what does that look like? I saw $1 million from the federal government, I think.
Yes, sir.
What is the total that we're talking about here?
Right now, to maintain the team in its present form, it would take approximately $1.2 million because we have 13 FTEs. We have presented some reimagined figures, scaling down, right sizing, if you will. And some of those figures, please keep me honest, could include anywhere from $700,000 on as low as $500,000 to $200,000. We're just doing everything we can to really think outside of the box. We know that it would probably be a strong imposition, but at the same time, we have also come up with some additional funding that we've had inside our coffers in public health enterprise to the tune of about $200,000 to assist us. So one thing that we pride ourselves on public health is not just take. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we can come to the table and sort of broker a deal. So with that, we're grateful to Manager Hager for, again, she has received the receipt, but we also know that Manager Hager has a lot on her plate in terms of all the enterprise. But with that being said, we have done the best that we can to, scour our staffing matrices just to make sure the work can continue. And we're hopeful, and we are most positive that, some of the scenarios that we came up with would, in fact, allow this great work to continue.
And correct me if I'm wrong, just from this presentation, you're saying September 30th, like next month, would be the end if alternative funding sources aren't found. So I'm seeing shaking heads, so I'm guessing that's a correct number. With all the partners that we have listed on here, is there, I'm guessing it's a range of different types of partnerships. Are there any financial partners there? I mean, where maybe some of that could be found in the partnership, like I saw businesses, right? I saw like a lot of like businesses, and sometimes a lot of these are nonprofits and educations and stuff like that, education places. So okay, so we're looking at 1.2 million. Okay, thank you.
Like a philanthropic organization, yeah,
like that kind of thing. I'm just wondering, that's a lot of partners, and just wondering if a lot of them, again, are nonprofits. And yeah.
Are there philanthropic organizations that like focus on nutrition at this level?
Is mine open?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. There are certainly national philanthropic organizations, but I think I know from conversations with Diane, I believe that Kellogg Foundation was one that they were looking into. However, at Cooperative Extension, we happened to be in a meeting with them that was unrelated with that foundation, and they indicated that this area is not one of this geographic area is not one of their focus areas, and to maybe state level organizations would be a better place to look. I also just wanted to point out, as we look, there's lots and lots of partners there, and unfortunately many of them are facing their own challenges. Like specifically, I'm looking at UNC. They have a big, UNC and NC State have big SNAP Ed programs, so they are also scrambling to think about how they're going to continue their work that spans over different counties throughout the state. But there could definitely be some more brainstorming, and you all, the public health team, I'm sure, has talked about other options.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Thank you. First of all, it's amazing looking at this slide, the partnerships, and it's a testament to the staff in public health who have run the DIME program. They're so committed and enthusiastic. We know we know DINE, I meant to say DINE. We know the DIME program is very effective, and it is very consistent with the Durham County's focus on investing in children and upstream investments. And we know that food is health, and especially the role that the DIME program has played in Durham Public Schools is critical. I really appreciate that you have put forth 2 possible options. And if you want to go back to those funding options, yeah. And I wanted to say that I personally support us going with this option, the 55%, and the county funding $385,020 versus the other one, which was, if you want to look at that really quickly, is, what was it, 40%. So I support us going with the 55% option. And I know there was another slide where you showed what we could still do with that funding. Yeah. And, you know, we're going to be having to make a lot of choices. We just heard about, you know, the possible impact to Medicaid. So we know there's going to be other things that we're going to have to step up and locally fund. But I think I personally support this. I think we need to maintain this investment in our children and in, you know, nutrition, which is fundamental for learning in schools. And related to possible partners, I'm wondering whether our economic development staff could help with reaching out to some of the local foundations, Manager Hager, especially the companies that we have done incentives with. I'm thinking, for, you know, Eli Lilly has a foundation. We know Fidelity has a foundation. There's a number of companies in RTP that have foundations and that we have, again, we are involved in incentive agreements with, and Eli Lilly especially comes to mind. I don't recall any. I know Fidelity has done a lot to support Durham Public Schools. I'm not, you know, I'm not really aware offhand what Eli Lilly has been involved with, but they have been very strongly invested in Indianapolis, where their headquarters is, and they have done a lot. They have had a lot of interest in things like early childhood. And this, again, to me, this is a program investing in our children and in our schools. And again, Duke, I don't know if Duke is something where they would be able to invest. The Duke Office of Regional Durham Affairs. Anyway, I appreciate that you all are saying that we'll look at other partnerships as well.
Indeed.
So I just want to state that I support going with the 55%.
Certainly appreciate that, Commissioner Jacobs, and I'd be remiss if I did not thank you personally for leading the charge when this first came on the radar, and you definitely were one to raise the alarm by making sure that letters went out to our congressional delegation espousing the fact that this is so important and we've had so many different relationships. I'd also be remiss if I did not mention to this board, this great board, that a part of our reimagining is the fact that these are licensed dietitians. So the work that they do can turn into revenue generating activities. So that's a part of our reimagining as well. We said some of the services that we provide, we could possibly try to bill for it. So as I mentioned before, public health normally comes before this great board, not taking, but providing options to really be a revenue generating unit to give back to the county's coffers. So we certainly appreciate one vote, and we look forward to the other 4.
Commissioner Britton.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Thank you for sharing this information with us. It's really disheartening to know that our elected officials at the federal level, state level, what have you, have decided to end this education about healthy eating, balanced nutrition. I was looking at a documentary about Japan and why the obesity, epidemic is not there like it has been here in the United States. And one of the reasons is they have a licensed nutritionist at every school. who is in charge of making sure that the meals are healthy, are balanced. They oversee the workers in the school cafeterias to make sure the food is healthy. And you know, we could do something like this here in our country, but we choose not to. So I have been a witness of the great work that Raina has done, because she came to my school when I was at Spring Valley Elementary. She did wonderful work, and I know it's valuable work to make sure our children know what's good, healthy eating, because they share that with their parents as well. So we'll get through this, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burton. Rachel, did you have anything?
I just have one comment. Thank you so much for your time this morning. One comment I wanted to make is if the funds can be found to help us continue the program at least through June 30th, the county's fiscal year, in some way, we would have more time to look for additional funding from Eli Lilly, the other organizations that might be able to provide funding. Currently, these 13 positions are going to be gone on September 30th, and that doesn't, as you all know, grants take a long time to find. So we would appreciate that for that reason, to look for additional funding time. And one other comment I wanted to make is looking at those 13 positions, adding up all their service to Durham County equals over 80 years of service. So these 13 positions that we're losing are people that have given a lot to Durham County in the public education. And so anything we can do to help hold on to some of these people and their good work, and to provide us more time to find additional funding. Thank you.
In conclusion, just want to say thank you to this great board. We seem to have a path forward. I'm glad that Rachel mentioned that these are not short-term, 1 to 2 year individuals who've been with Durham County. Some of them have been here for a very, very long time. And to Manager Hager, who has had countless conversations with me behind the scenes about this issue, I just say thank you very much.
Well, I think our board needs to give direction right now. So we need to get a consensus.
I think it's important that I share what I've shared with public health. We are in unprecedented times. Okay? There are executive orders that are coming out on programs across the board. Right now, I've asked departments to do a deep dive into their budgets so that we can understand what we're facing. Some of the adjustments that may occur may be very soon, such as with Dime. Others may be a little bit longer, such as what's been shared about SNAP. There are more gaps than we can cover. I just want to make that clear. My strategy will be to make sure that we are cognizant that the programming that's been helping the community for years stay intact as best as we can. What I also recognize is that there may be opportunities for individuals that are impacted that can serve in other capacities within the organization as we look at the broader picture. We will not be able to close all the gaps, but I promise you that we will come up with strategies that are tactical, that will serve the community, and as best we can, continue services at a level that keeps the community whole. And that's been my commitment to the public health director, Dr. Jenkins, as well as to Maggie, the DSS director, because those two entities will get hit the hardest. And so with that, I just ask that the board with direction do understand the context that we're working under. I mean, we did talk about these two programs. There are others as well that we're working through. We will present a strategy soon. We understand the sort of the anxiousness that's there, but there are a couple of things that I did this year that folks did not understand that puts us in a better position. I pulled back on a few benefits offerings that we had because I knew this was coming. So because of that, we do have some cushion, okay? But that's only for a short period. So I want us to think about short and long term as well. So I'd ask that if the board would trust that we will come up with strategies to, as best we can, make folks whole, most importantly, that for those who will be potentially losing funding from the DINE program, know that we're committed through our vacancies that we have available to try to figure out ways to fix that. The overlay of this is that there are so many other departments that are going through this as well. And so the exercise that departments are going through with looking at what short-term, long-term, and potential cuts will happen through August. A lot of this just happened. I think that's the challenge with all of this, where it finds ourselves in a tsunami, unexpected, with sinking sand in a lot of different places. But I do feel as though we have a path forward so that we can work through it. I've heard the board desires to move forward with DINE, I know, in some way, and we can definitely do that. I just ask that let us come back to you so we can give you some guidance in the context of it all. Dr. Jenkins has expressed he's always very creative on trying to figure out ways to generate revenue and in a way that the market actually needs. And so we will come back with a plan that overlays short and long-term strategies, but felt it was real important that we give a framework in which we're working under. This is probably one of the most challenged areas because it's been long-term funding for decades and now it's gone. And so I just wanted to give that context, knowing that we will work through this. I am so grateful for the collaborative efforts between Maggie and Rob, that they, without a skip of a beat, trying to figure out, well, how do we bridge that? So I know we'll have a bridge, not as ready to say what that is, but we can come back even before the September member meeting, my apologies, with what that bridge looks like.
Do you have a tentative goal date to come back to the board with this analysis?
Well, the goal is within the next few weeks that we would finalize things. And so by the 28th board meeting, I am sure we would have some clarity as to at least a short-term strategy. Yes. Because again, this just happened.
Yeah.
It is not normal. We are not in normal times. And so we will shift and act swiftly, but we will also be measured and thoughtful in how we do it.
Commissioner Burton?
Yeah, when I was listening to the presentation, I was like, wait, what are you talking about? So I know this is a really, really great program and I want us to keep it, but I want to hear, okay, how can we come up with some strategies like for long term, figuring out how do we, keep it or what have you, and just listening to the staff and County Manager Hager's guidance and things like that, so.
Commissioner Jacobs, and then Commissioner Valentine.
And I'm wondering about the double bucks program, because, again, going back to that slide, the chart about the ways to keep things going, could we go back to that chart again? Because it's not just the education within the classroom, but it's also the double bucks support, and then the Durham food resource map, which a lot of our everyone relies on that map, the End Hunger Durham, and the app and the map where people can go to find out where there's food every day, food pantries. So I think we also have to keep in mind and it's also helping our seniors. So, I've made myself clear, but I do think that the fact that public health is going to step up with $200,000 is really great, and we're certainly not looking at 1.1 million, even with the 55%, is really only about a quarter or a third of that. So again, we're going to have to be nimble. We're going to have to pivot, and we're going to be making very quick decisions to deal with the crisis that's being thrust on all of us. So I appreciate everyone working together on this, and I think it's important that we are letting our staff and our community and our partners know that we are not going to abandon this program.
Manager Hager, thank you for your measured remarks with respect to the challenges that we face in this environment. And thank you as well for pointing out what me and my colleague were actually having a discussion, a sidebar about with regards to how we could potentially fill that gap until the next budget cycle. So to the extent that we can get data in real time that meets the mail in that regard, that's something that I could support. So thank you.
Thank you all so much. Okay, so then we'll get updated
Thank you all.
on August 20th.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Do we have folks from Alliance here now? Okay. Then we'll have our presentation from Alliance Community Health Board, the health update. Thank you all for joining us. We have an hour dedicated to this. Do you all think 30 minutes for presentation, then 30 minutes for questions will be enough? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Manager Hager. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I am Rob Robinson, the CEO with Alliance Health. I am joined by, to my right, Sean Schreiber, who is our Chief Operating Officer. To my immediate left is Sarah Wilson. She's the Chief of Staff. She keeps us all in line. And then to the left is Kelly Goodfellow, our CFO. So we were asked to give an update today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Alliance. I know some of the commissioners are new or may not be familiar. We haven't been here in a while. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the Durham County budget and then get into programs and services that are available in this community. So let me start with the timeline. We think this might be helpful. Alliance Behavioral Healthcare began operating as a local management entity / MCO in July of 2012. LME again stands for local management entity. That's about managing care for people who are uninsured. MCO stands for managed care organization. That's about responsible for managing people with Medicaid. When we formed, one of our first acts was to merge with Wake County, and then that came the formation of Alliance Behavioral Health Care. So the founding member of Alliance actually is the Durham Center. We were the mental health agency for Durham County. We merged with Wake County. We also set up an agreement with Cumberland County and Johnston County. The focus of that time was to help people with mental health, substance use, and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities get care. We were not responsible for the physical health side. We essentially operated what's called a behavioral health carve-out. We did that up until July 1st of 2024. In the meantime, in January of 2019, we changed our name from Alliance Behavioral Health Care to Alliance Health in preparation to become a Taylor Plan. A Taylor Plan was something that we've been advocating for. We certainly believe in whole person care. We've always just managed the behavioral health and IDD side of care. We thought it was important for us to manage the whole person and take on responsibility for managing the physical health as well as the pharmacy benefit, which is what we did in July of 2024. Right now, there are 4 Taylor plans across the state. I will show you Alliance's region in just a minute. To give you a little bit of background, there once used to be a mental health organization in about every county. Then there became LMEs, and there was 43 of us. Now we're down to 4, and there's still conversations about potentially reducing that number down to fewer than 4. One of the services I want to make sure you're aware of under the Taylor Plan is that we do offer Taylor Care Management. Taylor Care Management is delivered by staff that are alliances or by one of our contracted providers. This service is responsible for ensuring people that we care for are connected to needed services. All right, so this brings us to today. You'll see that we are a staff of about 1,300. To give a little background, when we were the Durham Center, we had a staff of about 50, maybe 75 at one point. We're now a staff of 1,300. We operate a $2.5 billion budget. We cover those 7 counties. We are the only Taylor Plan that serves primarily an urban setting. That's the population that we're most equipped to serve. Again, it's mostly the Triangle, and then we also serve Charlotte. Our covered population, our Taylor Plan members, which is around 68,000 across our 7 counties. Taylor Plan are people with severe mental health, severe substance use disorder, and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Medicaid Direct, there's about 80,000 of those. Those are individuals who have been delayed or will not be entering the managed care environment, and we just manage the behavioral health and IDD services for that population. And then we're also responsible for those who are uninsured, underinsured, which is about 317,000 across our 7 counties. And we receive state dollars and certainly county dollars to serve the uninsured. Again, we are not a service provider. We contract with providers to deliver the care. We contract with over 4,000 providers across the state who deliver needed care to our populations. A contracted provider could be an individual therapist, it could be a community organization, or it could be a hospital or health system. Bottom line for us, we are responsible for serving those with the greatest needs in Durham County and across our 7 counties. I want to emphasize an important part of the work we do is working with our counties and stakeholders. We know we can't do this work alone and need the help of the partners that you mentioned that were up before us: public health, DSS, court systems, homeless centers, nonprofits, to help make sure that people get the care that they need. I do want to make you aware, I didn't know if you knew this, Durham is actually a leader in the state in delivering behavioral health services. That we have built a system in partnership with you and other stakeholders over the past 20 years since I've been in Durham. making sure that people have the needed care. The Durham Crisis Facility is actually one of the first in the state. The Behavioral Health Urgent Care in Durham is one of the first in the state, and there's other innovative and creative programs in Durham that I'd like to share with you. Now, there's certainly needs and gaps, and we can talk a little bit about that, but there's certainly foundation pieces in place that you should all be proud of that we need to continue to work from. And then, Commissioner Jacobs, I know you sent a list of questions. We were going to go through, we got them this morning, and so I think we can answer some of them. Some of them we might have to take back, but we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. All right, with that, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Goodfellow.
Thank you. Good morning. Over the next few slides, I'm going to provide an update on the Durham County funds that are with Alliance. For context, we've been before this board in previous times, and we've talked about the struggles of the last few years, starting with the COVID times, in which we received additional dollars that meant that we were able to use other funds for the programs that have normally been covered under the county funding agreement. On December 1st, then 23, Medicaid expansion went into place, which allowed members who were previously being served with state dollars to be moved to Medicaid. This resulted in additional unspent county dollars because we were able to cover those funds under the Medicaid agreement. Additionally, we have been advocating for several years since COVID for the legislators to not reduce our single stream funds. We know there are continued needs in the community, even with Medicaid expansion. We did see a reduction in this legislative session, so we'll be working with that in the overcoming months as we receive our reduction. Moving to the first slide in this section, this is the status of the fiscal year 25 funds as of today. Please note that we're still wrapping up fiscal year 25. We have final invoices and final entries, but it's safe to say that if this changes, it won't be drastic. And so as you can see, the amount of unspent is over $5 million. Again, since COVID and certainly with Medicaid expansion, we're continuing to address provider capacity, recruitment and retention, and then since occasionally the reimbursement on Medicaid is greater than non-Medicaid, providers still struggling to serve our members. This is a historical slide that demonstrates the opening points I made about until COVID, we fully spent our funds. Fiscal year 24, of course, was the year with Medicaid expansion. And as of note, line 3 there, this footnote, these funds were returned to the county per our agreement. And in fiscal year 25, we moved to a reimbursement methodology so that we would not be in a position to have funds to return at the end of the year.
Kelly, I normally don't interrupt people, but I do want to just exalt the approach that y'all do, because you are maximizing other dollars first. And it makes a huge difference for us in how we manage operations. So it helps the residents we're serving, but it also helps the county. And I did want to say thank you for how you are doing that work, because some could take an easier path and just code those expenses against the local dollars. So I do thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that acknowledgement. And we are very, make sure we use the county dollars as a dollar less spent for all our communities. So,
can I just clarify, and is that related to also Medicaid expansion and more people? The ability to use other dollars, is it related to more people being covered by Medicaid? Is that one of the main factors?
Correct. And to make note of the presentation before us, if the changes occur that were talked about, we will see those members return to our uninsured needs, and we will see the use of our state dollars and the county dollars increase.
Kelly, can I jump in? I do want to say Medicaid expansion has worked remarkably for our population. Many of our folks who've been uninsured, underinsured, the amount of services available under state and county dollars, while we're grateful for that, is woefully does not compare to what's available under Medicaid. So many of these folks were able to move to Medicaid and get a more comprehensive benefit. One of the things we've done with state and county that we prepared for with Medicaid expansion is we were to up our benefit package so people would get the same service whether you were uninsured or Medicaid, which has never been done. We also increased the provider rates to equal Medicaid. So we've done some things. We're actualizing those now. I think you'll see some more things being done creatively. So I'm a huge champion of Medicaid expansion. It has worked remarkable for us. Thank you.
This next slide reflects the services for fiscal year 26, and it reflects the reduction that was given to us. These services have traditionally been covered, so nothing's changed in terms of programs or services. I will say the Recovery Response Center, the budget's a little over $5.5 million, and so you see that as 3.2 because we were able to shift that $2 million to be covered with state dollars because of those additional dollars being available due to Medicaid expansion. So something to keep an eye on in the future. And finally, this is the status of our expansion efforts. We previously came before this board proposing a number of ways we can expand services in the community using the funds that were returned to you. We know there are plenty of needs in the community, but often startup is required, and additionally some programs that we identify to be able to expand are not covered by Medicaid or state dollars. My colleague is going to review the status of the implementation efforts, but I want to review the dollars with you briefly. And so very briefly going through the lines. So the first line of the virtual teen peer support, we propose one-time funding of $160,000 for the county. This year we think we'll use about $40,000. Once that's implemented fully, we'll use ongoing alliance dollars. I will say there's some statewide efforts going on right now, and so we see these dollars just being able to additionally support specific Durham efforts. We also have El Futuro support for Strong Minds. This has been identified as $769,000 of county funds that will be used this year, and ongoing this is proposed to be funded by the county, additionally with some alliance ongoing dollars. We have integrated care at the Recovery Response Center, one-time county funding of $250,000. We anticipate using $100,000 of that in fiscal year 26. When this is implemented, ongoing alliance will fund it fully. We have some wonderful updates about school-based mental health team today. Just to tell you, we propose a one-time funding to start this up of 1.5. We anticipate using $700,000 of that this year, and ongoing that would be funded by the county, $1.5 million. For SOAR workers, those are the individuals who help get members on Medicaid. That was identified as one-time funding of $56,000. We anticipate using $28,000 of that this year, and ongoing alliance will cover that at $56,000. And then we have additionally threshold support of $160,000 in fiscal year 26, ongoing $160,000, and that was built into the budget for fiscal year 26 already. So we are really grateful for the dollars associated with these services. This is the benefit of having money left over, which is very rare, but being able to expand services in this community in ways that Medicaid or state can fund it is wonderful. And so I will turn it over to get further on and be able to explain some of these programs.
Good morning. I'm Sean Schreiber, Chief Operating Officer Alliance. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today and talk about some of our work in the community. Many of you may know Ann Oshel, who's our Senior Vice President of Community Health and Wellbeing. She's on a well-deserved long weekend, so I'm going to fill in for a couple of slides for her. One of the things we're very proud of is the partnership with Durham County Schools to launch a school-based care management team or care coordination team. Durham has invested and has a very progressive system providing behavioral health services to youth in school, and this will really round that out by further connecting community resources, family, addressing some of those drivers of healthcare outside of counseling and medical care. So we'll be complementing the PULSE program, which is the Durham model and framework for delivering school-based care, and then implementing key elements that we've found success doing a program like this in Wake County, where children who are leaving the community for residential care often can be out of schools for 6 months, a year, trying to get them reintegrated back back into the community and school is quite a challenge. The school-based mental health team helps arrange that. We also have children who are identified as being in a crisis. They may come through special programs at school. They may be hospitalized and need to get back, kind of integrate into school with some additional supports. The school-based care coordination team will do those links. Another component, as they begin with younger children, identifying those with intellectual and developmental disability needs, they get those individuals on our innovations waiting list. As you may know, there's a program in Medicaid in the state that provides very comprehensive support to people who have long-term intellectual and developmental disabilities. Unfortunately, the waiting list for those services across the state is almost, I think, now larger than the number of people get it. I think it's at 13,000 individuals. So it becomes very important as soon as you identify a young person with these issues to get them on that wait list. So hopefully as they get older, they can get those services. So the key of this is, again, to make sure kids get their behavioral health services met and address those needs kind of outside traditional health care, such as food support, sometimes child care, if there's domestic violence in the home, address those kind of issues. Again, I think I ran through this, but the key really for this program is making sure kids are connected to all levels of care. The other thing is we use licensed clinicians in this program. So let's say the school has concerns about safety. It just becomes another resource to help staff a case. And then our team actually brings these back to a child psychiatrist and reviews high-risk cases with the Alliance Child Psychiatrist to provide some guidance to the school. The other thing we want to do is we've been really pleased. There's a virtual teen program that Alliance was the first in the state to contract with called Somethings. During the hurricane, the state piggybacked on our contract to provide virtual teen support to children in the impacted areas. We think this is a really unique service for youth and gives them some specialized support. Currently, any child from Durham, Wake, wherever, who comes to our child crisis facility or interacts with our child mobile crisis teams get offered this app. We want to, as we explore this more with the school system, make this another offering so as kids are engaged with that school-based care coordination team, this can be a kind of another one-on-one mental health support for youth. And I think it will complement the school strategy nicely. Just to give you an update on this, there has been an MOA that talks about how this agreement will work between the school system and Alliance. That's been fully blessed. All the positions are posted. As you can see, we'll have one bilingual care coordinator, we'll have 3 licensed clinicians, and this long-term services liaison. That's the individual who makes sure these youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities get on our waiting list and get linked with all the services that are currently available through Medicaid and state funds. We're going to launch the program based on school direction in the Southwest region. 12 schools will be covered initially, and plans are for it to begin at the beginning of the school year. Any questions on that before I move into the network update?
Thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of interest in that particular part that Alliance does with DPS. I had questions about that during the budget, about where the money was going, because we get a lot of questions from people in the schools about how if the money is being spent and how it's not trickled down to the schools where workers are getting the money. So the question I have is, where do you know where the schools, where these licensed clinicians are going to be yet? You said in the South, I think the Southwest region of Durham Public Schools. And also, I think you said it's intellectually and developmentally, children with intellectual and developmental delays or what have you. So I just want you to expand on that.
Sure. So I will have to come back to you with the list of schools that have been targeted, so I don't know that off track. But it actually targets children with full range of behavioral health services, substance use needs, crisis. There's just a particular specialty area for those kids with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So again, primarily that service system's a little different than the typical behavioral health service, and the funding streams are different. So we want someone who has more of a unique skill set navigating that for families and the youth, but it will serve basically any child the school system says in that district, this child needs some extra support, and the referrals will come from school-based care teams to that program.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know, because it's dealing with a specific cohort of students in the schools who are going through something a little bit wide range. So that's helpful to know. And so, yeah, I will be interested in knowing which schools and things like that. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you for this. I was actually looking forward to this here. Just in full transparency, what we're hearing from DPS is a completely different picture of what you're painting here. And so I'm really curious about this, and I want to learn more about it because I don't know where the disconnect is and the disconnect between your organization and DPS. I'm really interested in a couple things, how often are you meeting with DPS administration about these plans and what you're doing in the schools, because there just seems to be a gap there. And I'm really curious about that. Do we have any information about how often and when you're meeting with DPS administration?
Yeah, so planning had kicked off probably just a couple months ago. So this is a relatively new program, so it's not up and functional in the school yet. So there's been planning meetings. I don't know the cadence. I know it's been a combination of our senior vice president of community health and well-being, and we have a director of school-based programming in Wake County who's going to have expansion responsibilities, has been meeting with the Department of Public Instruction, so public schools. I'll have to get more information and get the cadence for you, though.
Okay. And but you all have been engaging with DPS for a while now, right? Yeah. So do we know the number of students you all have served in and out of DPS, just in Durham County in general as well? I'm really, again, my questions, I had some conversations this morning with some of the DPS people in DPS, and that's where these kind of questions are coming from. I would have sent them in advance, but I just didn't have a chance to meet with people I would meet with. Do we have those numbers of how many we're engaging with in DPS and how?
Sure. So we can get for you the number of children, I don't have them offhand, but who get any behavioral health services that are Alliance funded, who would be school-age children. We fund an array of services, but we also cover, if you think about the population that goes to school, our treatment services, and this will be a little different in the care coordination, so I'll go back to that in a minute. The treatment services are for those who either meet that Taylor plan eligibility, so they've already been identified as having a severe and significant mental illness, substance use, or intellectual developmental disability, or those populations that Rob said who have been carved out of managed care. The biggest population of youth would be kids in foster care. They're not in the Taylor plan, they're Medicaid direct. I do know that the majority of our, say, residential spend, intensive in-home spend is for children who are in the custody of DSS just across Alliance, but we can get you specific numbers for that. The school-based team's a little different because as a treatment funding agency, we're only focused on the populations that fall within our parameter. School-based, because it's coming from county funding, that will serve any youth who's in need. So it could serve a child who's commercially insured in standard Medicaid. So that will be a larger range of children that are optional for that team than are optional for additional Alliance services. We do contract. The school has put in place outpatient services with therapists that have their therapeutic agencies have direct contracts with the school, but we fund all the Medicaid and the uninsured services those providers who are in the schools bill for our youth.
Commissioner Lee, can I make sure I understand? So the question's coming from DPS. So this program hasn't started, right? And I'm curious is where they mean where the money's coming or where the money's going. So these positions are for positions to help get these folks connected to care that we will pay for once it's up and going. It would be helpful to understand what their questions are. So I'm
not asking about money. I'm just asking about the engagement of Alliance Health over time. Okay. And there just seems to be the picture that's being painted here is, hey, it's like this award, it's modeled after this award winning. We're doing this. We're engaging with the schools, and it doesn't seem to be the opinion. And I've heard this over time, not just this morning. I've just heard questions about Alliance Health. Are you saying? I just want to be clear here. I'm making sure I'm understanding. Your engagement with DPS has not started yet. Is that what you're saying?
Only the planning of the program. And so we're discussing elements that we do in another county that are going to be brought into this county as well. And that'll be the, excuse me, the foundation for the program.
So you all don't currently, so you're planning the program, you're currently not working on DPS at all?
So I don't think it's a either or. This program, I can just say, hasn't begun yet. It will start at the beginning of the school year.
So for some context, last fiscal year, we allocated an amount of county dollars that would support more intensive involvement with Durham Public Schools.
Right.
This relationship had not happened before, and it was to model an initiative that's happening in Wake County, if I'm not mistaken. The hope was last fiscal year that would have come to fruition. It's organized now so that I think Ann Osho, who's not here today, could give more details about the questions of frequency of contacts, et cetera. But for this specific contract, this will happen in 2026. But the genesis of it was just last year to model what's happened in Wake County. But there were some timing issues with the effort coming to fruition in last fiscal year. I think we updated the board, I guess in our joint board meeting last year this time with public schools, we talked about it. But I'm not sure what some of the issues were.
I appreciate that context, because it sounds as if DPS was expecting something to be going on last year. And if you're saying that it was allocated last year but it didn't get to happen,
right?
Well, then there's a misunderstanding. That's where the miscommunication is, sure. Because DPS is saying, like, what's going on? You know, Alliance, we're not engaging with Alliance Health. We're not engaging at all, but this money was allocated. And so that's where we're hearing that from. And now I hear this sounded like an update of something that was already going. And so that's where I think there may be a miscommunication.
And I'm sure when Ann returns, she can show some timelines, because that was probably in many of our board conversations, sort of where were we in process. It was not as easy as a turnkey, but Ann can share some of those context components of it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Lee, thank you for the feedback, though. We're going to follow up immediately with DPS on the engagement piece. That's not what we want to be known for. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Since Chair Lum is out, I'll take over. I'll go to Commissioner Jacobs and then to Valentine.
Well, thank you. I know we're only partway through the presentation, but I'm glad you all are here. Related to the fact that we have been able to use less county dollars over the past few years, thanks to Medicaid, I think I'm wondering what kind of role you all are going to play in helping to support North Carolina changing our trigger law, because we just heard a presentation that's really essential to not lose more than the 660,000 people who could immediately be eliminated from receiving care. And we know that's where we're seeing that benefit to Durham residents being able to get access to physical and behavioral health care like they haven't before. So I think you all are going to be very important partners in explaining the various ways that Medicaid expansion has really helped people, and helping to support the state taking action.
Yeah, Commissioner Jacobs, that is critically important to us. The numbers that came over from Medicaid expansion have not been a lot, but it's been enough for enough people that it's made the difference for them. At the top of my list, we have lobbyists and government relations folks that are active trying to prevent this. It would be so devastating, and I know I'm naive sometimes. I can't imagine a scenario where they cut 660,000 people off Medicaid. Now, I know it could be done, but our job is to continue to push what would happen if they did make that decision to eliminate Medicaid expansion for those people. It is top priority for us.
And then related to the sewer positions, which help support people's eligibility, where are those people located?
This particular position is available in the Durham Crisis Response Center, so the RI facility. We have in several communities these kind of positions embedded to help, and we believe that when that redetermination comes, they'll play a big role in that as well.
Okay, yeah, so we were also discussing the importance of the partnership for the 6-month recertifications as well as the work requirement documentation. So I'm glad that we have those people in place. The issue around how long it's taken to get this mental health support program getting going in Durham Public Schools, since it has taken so long to get it going, over a year, I would just say we need to do everything we can once we get it going to make sure we keep it going. So, there's no doubt that this is going to be an important program that links people to care, and I just would hate to see, because we did it with extra funding that we had because of this gap, this extra money that we had. So I just want to put a pin on the fact that it's taken us so long, and if we have funding challenges, I just would hate to see it then all just disappear. So I think we need to keep that in mind. What are going to be the sustainable ways to fund this? Because again, this is an upstream investment. When we're getting kids into mental health treatment when they're in school, then we know we will reap the benefits later on as well.
If I could offer, and what I've done with other counties and when we've had similar programs, is do a run out so you can see, how many fiscal years in the future it could be before we exhaust the money that was returned to you that we are utilizing for the expansion of services. So we can certainly do that.
Commissioner Valentine.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yeah, so just going back to your lobbyists working on your behalf, or Alliance's behalf, with regard to the trigger law, we thank you for that. But at the same time, I do envision a world where 671,000 people are neglected here in North Carolina. And the reason why I envision that world is because we were last to come to the table and make an expansion. And so I'm frightened. So thank you for any efforts in that regard. But my specific question goes back to DPS, and so I've had an opportunity, and correct me if I'm wrong. I've been wrong before, once. I'm just kidding. It's my understanding that you are getting in the pre-K space with Durham Public Schools. And there was a conversation about the contract moving forward, and it not moving forward very slowly. And so again, it could be a matter of a miscommunication in that regard, but any information you could provide for me today would be helpful for my understanding regarding that, because they seem to be ready to move on that. And of course, this body has made a commitment in the pre-K space, and we intend on meeting that.
I'll have to check on the schools, but any care coordination program would be, again, starting the beginning of the school year, and the MOA, the legal agreement that allows us to work together, is in place, and we're hiring. But we'll get, again, the list of schools so you can see the space. I apologize for not being prepared with that this morning.
Oh, no problem. I just wanted to make sure that was on your radar. How you work through those deals is what you do. But I just wanted to share with you that there is conversations going on about that. And then again, I appreciate Vice Chair Lee's comments this morning, because those are the sort of disconnected sort of communications that I think you can address in short order.
Yeah. A lot of the questions you're asking are community-based, run by Ann Oshel, and after today, she will never be allowed to take a vacation again. So we got you covered.
Thank you.
Okay, we can continue on the provider network.
Okay, so there were some questions that we had in advance and tried to work those in with some updates as well. So Alliance has had kind of a long-term soft relationship with Lincoln Community Health Center. They served a lot of our members. Now, as a tailored plan, they are responsible. They have about 1,914 of our members assigned to them for primary care, which means two things. Obviously, anyone they treat, they get paid at their FQHC rate, which is very helpful to them because they get a much different rate than a typical Medicaid provider, and they provide a much more comprehensive array of services. But there's also a small health home payment that they get for all these members as well, whether they see them or not, just to help some of their infrastructure. So that's one of the roles that Lincoln plays, and obviously they provide a range of services. The other thing is they have historically provided on-site integrated care at the Durham Recovery Response Center, the crisis facility. That service has, over the last year, had to halt because of staffing challenges at Lincoln and some workflow issues between the two entities. There's been some workforce challenges. We've been meeting with Lincoln and RI. The additional funding will allow them now to be able to fund enough of clinician time to be able to get someone to go over there, because the funding before was relatively small, so they had to provide like 2 days a week for a small number of hours, really hard to recruit. So now with the additional funding, they'll have more hours they can offer a provider to be over on site, and it also helps offset some of the workflow challenges between the two entities. So we're excited that that should be getting back on the road in this coming year. And again, that was really only possible because of the additional contribution from the county. There's actually a couple things going on with El Futuro, as you're aware. They specialize and serve in the Hispanic Latino population within Durham and the region, and they provide a number of services, community support, outreach. They've kind of created a center, if you've been out to their treatment office, with a community garden and a healing space. The expense of serving individuals who generally have been left out of even Medicaid expansion is high. There's a lot of outreach. As you can imagine, there's not a lot of trust in this community at this point with the current political environment, and so they spend a lot of time doing outreach. And we've supported them to provide therapy, case management, community outreach, community education, and a program that actually we funded the startup of, something called Strong Minds. This is a program out of the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, that takes a relatively available professional or semi-professional resource, community health workers. There's just such a shortage of professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists who speak, who are multilingual. And so this actually trains residents from the community who are bilingual, and it teaches them in kind of a mental health, almost like a mental health first aid model, where they do community outreach and then do groups. El Futuro started this in Orange County, and now they've expanded to Durham County. And what they're reporting is much greater engagement in this program than some of their traditional programs. And actually, they were at times where they were kind of backing up for some of their therapists because they're just a limited number. This program has come in and gotten people engaged quicker. So this has been, I think, a really important expansion for the community, and a community that's been underserved historically in most of North Carolina. Another kind of unique and interesting program, there's actually two programs coming to Durham through Carolina Outreach. There's been a big emphasis through some recent reform, justice reform, to do a better job connecting individuals coming out of jails and out of long-term prison to get them back in the community. As you can imagine, the recidivism rate for people with serious mental illness is very high. We're going to leave off the table the recent executive orders at the moment, but this is a team that meets with individuals before they get released, that has a social worker, peer support, employment specialist, psychiatrist, nurse. They in-reach and then deliver the service within the community. And with this population, there's a special focus on jail, some of the medical care, or I guess it's not readmission, recidivism, and really looks at also kind of those factors that tend to promote people towards kind of criminal activity. So this is an important program. The county, this is coming out of funds that the state has given, and Durham's going to be one of the pilot areas for this. But the county's also funded a step-down version of this called Community Support Team. So for folks who don't have quite this significant of a need or a rate to step down, there'll be another service where people can move into for this kind of service. So pretty unique services in Durham for this population.
I just have a quick question, because about a year ago, again, this is when, it may have been even further back, when we had this extra money, this board, it may even have been 2 years ago, approved money for a forensic act team, which was a recommendation of the Stepping Up initiative when we did an update of our sequential intercept map and showed that Durham did not have a forensic act team, which is the best practice for people re-entering our community from either prison or jail. So you just said, though, that this is going, and I know it's another program that's taken a long time to get going, and that we just made a contract with Carolina Outreach to actually implement it, so it's just finally getting started. But you just said that the state is going to fund this, so I'm just wondering what's going to happen with the actual money that we had allocated from county funding for this.
My understanding of that is that's what's supporting that step down level, the community support team, that because we have now state dollars for the most intensive, the Forensic Act program, and Carolina Outreach was awarded that through a competitive process. We didn't need to use the county dollars for that. Instead, they're being used for the program I believe you signed, the contract was done for, a community support team. I don't know, Kelly, if there's anything to add to that.
You're correct, and I can speak to the time it took. We were in process of negotiating the agreement between Durham County and Alliance, and actually I think that's in the process of being signed, but we ran into some complications and challenges there in that negotiation, so, which contributed to the delay.
Okay, I think we're hearing a theme, though, about, I think, how can we look at expediting some of these agreements and making sure that it doesn't take as long to get things going, because we're just highlighting two different programs that have taken a long time to get in place. So I don't know if, for you all to look at what's happening in terms of making sure things get done in a timely manner.
One of the things we did towards the end of last year, we have a project management team that lives within the network department that helps to run this. We have made a small expansion of that team, and we're hoping the addition of these staff will help move some of these projects along. At any given time, and this is not to be an excuse, but the state also will come to Alliance and say, hey, we need you to do this, we need you to do that. We may have 24, 26 programs in flight to develop, and so we've had to do some catch up on staffing to meet the need. Right, going on to Durham Recovery Response Center. So this is the 24/7 crisis facility that's been in Durham, and as Rob said, I believe it may have been the first in the state, and most of the crisis facilities around the state have been modeled after this. This is a facility where people can walk in any time of day or evening. If they're experiencing a behavioral health crisis, they can be brought by law enforcement because law enforcement picks somebody up, or the magistrate can issue a commitment order, and police can then drop off individuals at the recovery center. We've heard recently there may be some challenges on that IVC part, that's the drop off, so we'll be working through those. But this facility has been open and doing a service for probably well over 12 years in the community. And it provides 3 levels of service. So you can walk in and you can get a general assessment, and if you have a treatment need where you can be returned out the door, they'll take care of that treatment need, potentially start you on medication, and there's a handoff to a community provider. They also have 23-hour chairs, so let's say someone presents and they're just not stable enough, they maybe need more observation, maybe a cooling off period, they can remain in the facility for up to 23 hours in kind of a living room type setting. And the last is facility crisis beds, which are residential. They're almost like inpatient psychiatric beds, so they have 16 of those, so people can stay from anywhere to 4 to 7 days is the average that people stay in those facilities. And again, we'll be adding back in the integrated care component where there's the physician going to be located on site who can do some treatment and assessment of medical conditions. And again, the reason we wanted that from Lincoln is most of these individuals will be best served long-term for their medical needs by Lincoln, so it's a good place to make that connection and go back. And again, as we mentioned, we have a benefits navigator or the SOAR worker who's embedded there to help to make sure the individuals who show up who aren't insured get kind of connected with Medicaid, and again, will play a role in that redetermination process. You can imagine people who are generally in a lot of behavioral health crisis aren't necessarily walking over to DSS to get themselves enrolled in Medicaid, so this is an option for us to capture those individuals and try to get them enrolled. And just for numbers, so one thing to note is, the Medicaid system's changed. Alliance is responsible for a certain segment of Medicaid, but more citizens in Durham are served by the commercial Medicaid standard plans, Blue Cross Blue Shield, WellCare, Centene, AmeriHealth, Caritas. So those are the other providers. We collect data on the Medicaid members we serve. The facility is set up only to take Durham County residents. So for us, there were 1,215 Alliance Medicaid and uninsured residents that we verified that we cover who presented to the urgent care facility and received assessment and sometimes that 23-hour observation. And then another 925 individuals from Alliance that Alliance covers who are Durham residents received the residential crisis bed services, so those 3 to 7 bed stays. And we did not have numbers on mobile crisis. I saw that was a question from this morning, and we'll get that back to you. We do collect information on behalf of the state on the facilities report to us the non-kind of Alliance covered members we serve. Those numbers tend to get reported inconsistently. I kind of question their validity, so I didn't include those in the report today. And we're working on different ways to validate that. And I think the last program that you have helped cover is there's a community program called Thresholds. It's a psychosocial rehabilitation. It's a community place for people who have serious long-term mental illness where they can come, get supported employment activities, community engagement, have a network of peers, get skills. And the big thing is because these are individuals with significant illness that have tendencies to go off medication, to experience relapse, it's really people who are observing them over a long period of time, can quickly engage them in more intensive care and make sure they're getting their needs met. So it's an expensive program to operate the way Threshold does. They offer a lot of things that are well outside the Medicaid service definition, the state service definition. So the county fund allows them to do things that typically would not be covered, particularly the job development and some of the crisis support they extend to those members. And just to end, this is how people can reach us, and we always like to put this at the end of our presentation, our crisis line and our member and recipient service line.
Commissioner Burton had a question.
Thank you, Chair Alam. Thank you for this because I'm the liaison to the Alliance Health Board, and I'll just be honest, sometimes when I sit there in the meetings that I've come to, I'm like, okay, what do they do? What do they do? This was a really good onboarding for new commissioners to get a better understanding of what Alliance Health is. And I would recommend, having something like this just because it's a lot. Now I understand, I have a better understanding that it's really for individuals with mental health. A lot of that service is going towards that. So thank you for that. And I think also what Commissioner Jacobs said about getting these projects off the ground, because when we look at line items, particularly something, well, for me, I'll speak for myself, when something goes for the schools, and individuals are coming to us saying, okay, where is this money going? Why aren't we seeing it used for the schools? That sets off a red flag. So just work better on that. But thank you for all of this. This was really, really helpful.
Commissioner Burton and Jacobs, I know this issues of us getting these programs off the ground. One of the things we pride ourselves in is getting these programs up and going. We know this money is important to you. Just quite frankly, we have a contract disagreement right now that we're working through with the county to try and make that happen. I don't like it. These are important programs that we've got to get up and going, so we've got to figure out a way to work through this, and we'll do it as soon as we can.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Thank you. So Durham County goes way back with Alliance. As you stated, Alliance roots are in Durham County. The Durham Center was our recovery response center. So we are the heart of Alliance, and now Alliance is much bigger, which is fantastic. But we do want to make sure that we don't get forgotten. Now that Alliance is serving, we're now one of the smaller counties with Wake and Mecklenburg in there. And so one of my questions is, I would really like to hear about some of the programs that I've read about that you all are doing in Wake and Mecklenburg that seem fantastic and really innovative. When we look at our behavioral health crisis system, it starts with 911, and often that's one of the main points of contact. But we know there's a whole spectrum of need, and we want to intervene and get people connected to care as early as possible, and with not having interaction with the criminal justice system, preferably. I would like to, maybe you all could come back and when Ann is here, with highlighting some of the other programs that are happening in Wake and Mecklenburg that we can think about that are, gaps in our system in Durham. One that I read about recently is a home respite system that's in neighborhoods where people who are in crisis can actually go to. It's a very much like a home setting. That we don't have anything like that in Durham. I'm looking at this number here. I don't think that people in our community know this phone number. So I think that how can we also, I'd like to hear in the future, how can we work together to get this out? And I'd also like to understand, are our current 911 operators, do we know how many people are referring people to this phone number? Because the national best practice now is, and we have an issue in Durham because our 911 center is not coordinated. We have two separate, the sheriff and the city county EMS, but it is considered, counties across the country are leading the way, who are diverting 911 calls to phone numbers like this, to mental health professionals. So I would like to understand how you all are working with our 911 centers and the staff. I'm going to be laying out a lot of questions, so it may be that you have to come back later or provide the information otherwise, but I think this is a really key issue.
Let me start with your programs that are Wake in Durham, Wake in Charlotte area. What's interesting, when we merged with Wake, they wanted to know, first question, what are the things you're doing in Durham that we want to emulate? And then when we went to Charlotte, what are the things you're doing in Durham and Wake that we want to emulate? So everything comes back to what Durham's doing around behavioral health. That does not mean by any stretch that there are not needs and gaps. And there are some things in Mecklenburg and Wake that we would be happy to share and see if we could duplicate here. PRN is a service you're talking about, a peer-run respite program is something we would like to expand in other counties. Wake County was interested in that, in funding that. We also help to support that. So we'll be happy to come back and share some of the new innovative things. But Mecklenburg did not, when we took them over a couple years ago, they did not have the service array that's available in this community. In fact, they're duplicating the Durham crisis response and are building one now, behavioral health urgent care. We just worked with the Steve Smith Foundation to build one because Durham had one. And so there are things here that are working well, but there's other things elsewhere that we'll be happy to share and tell you what the gaps are. In terms of the access, this number, we do get thousands of calls every month from people. Many of them are our members, right? One of the things that I think is going to be confusing for a while in our community. There's 9 health plans. So each health plan has their own members and are responsible for their behavioral health services. We used to be the only game in town, but now it's spread out, so people call all different numbers, right? We are trying to encourage people to call 988. 988 is still a work in progress. I love the idea of it. And then what we're asking for, if there are members, please connect them back to us so we can provide the care. Our call center has the main responsibilities to connect people to needed care or to provide behavioral health crisis response in case they are in psychiatric emergency, which means we call 911, we call mobile crisis, or we send them to a crisis facility for them to get served. I know one of our efforts is to make sure in all of our communities that we are connected to 911. I think we are connected here. We're in the process of getting connected here. Please don't tell me it's a contract issue. No. But
now, there hasn't been yet the same concerted effort of, to be honest, there's been conversations, but of having a formal relationship between the 911 center and Alliance. However, we've historically, for a long time, have had a connection where if anyone calls us and they may need an escalated response, we call CIT. We don't have to engage with the 911 call center to make sure our members get that more specialized response from all the crisis intervention trained police officers. But as of today, we're not having specific conversations. But I think it's intriguing that we continue to explore that.
Yeah, I think it's maybe we can help facilitate, especially with the city has a HEART program, and so that is a non-law enforcement crisis, different types of crisis response teams. But it's really important that the 911 operators know about the Alliance crisis line and be able to directly refer people. So please do pursue that, and maybe the county manager can help with connecting to, because the city operates that center.
Sure. We've done that kind of education. I'm sorry, I just meant as far as agreements, but we do educate. There's information. I'm not sure if we could get the exact call volume. I can check if that's reportable out to get to you, though.
Okay. Two things that weren't mentioned today for the benefit of our new commissioners, which I think Alliance funds, which is a mobile crisis team, and also the behavioral health urgent care walk-in clinic. And it would be great if we could get data on the usage and the services related to all of, the Recovery Response Center, the mobile crisis unit, the behavioral health walk-in, just understand how many people are being served in Durham. Would be really good to know, because we also need to understand who isn't being served. What are the capacity issues? Do we have enough providers? What are the wait times for people to get care? And my other big question is related to Recovery Response Center, because we have heard that there has been a decline in the drop-off from law enforcement, and originally we had great collaboration with the Office of the Sheriff and with deputies and with the police department and police officers, and the whole goal was to get people to take people directly to the Recovery Response Center rather than to jail. And so I think we need to all look at that and see what's happening and how can we get that partnership happening again. So I'd like to know, for us to know those numbers over time. And then also referrals from the Duke Regional Hospital behavioral health urgent care. They're literally across the street from each other. And to know how many people are getting referred, because we've had a big problem with people who are under IVCs that get stabilized with 24 hours, and they get discharged when they're really not ready to be discharged, and they don't have housing. if they could come to the Recovery Response Center, there's going to be a better chance of them getting some more continuation of care. So looking at that partnership. And then the third thing is, and I just read an article about this last night, there are some recovery response centers that are now having longer term care, up to like 14 days, for people who need much more, people who have severe mental health, substance use disorder. This is what we're seeing on the streets of downtown. We're doing a Familiar Faces pilot, and we're seeing that there are people who they need longer term care, and right now you can only get that in the state hospital or in state prison or in our jail. So I'm wondering, have you all done this in any other county, or you see other models where we could try to offer this at our Recovery Response Center?
Yeah, Commissioner Jacobs, those three questions, I'll take the first one, and then Sean can answer the last two about the data. So we send a quarterly dashboard to each of our counties, including Durham, that includes a summary of all the services provided, numbers served, money spent. I think that at times we include some gaps. If that report's not working, can I make sure we're aware of that so that we can change it to make sure we meet your needs? But I want to make sure that that report is sufficient for meeting your needs. So that's the data. That's the data piece, and we'll resend that. And then again, if there's something missing, please let us know, and we'll get that to you. Sean and I actually met with Recovery Innovations to talk about this issue, and I'll let Sean give an update on that.
Yeah, they share with us that for some reason, and they say they're kind of working this out, we're getting involved now that we're aware of it, that for some reason they weren't receiving the same level of IVC drop-offs, that the voluntary law enforcement drop-offs were about the same, but it's the IVC issue, so we're digging to that. And also, they also reported, the police then reported some similar kind of issues at Durham Regional. So actually meet with Durham Regional this afternoon to discuss like what's going on with the drop-off space, because that was actually the first time we heard that the IVC numbers or the IVC members weren't being diverted to the facility, even though it's IV certified. And there was a small decrease. It was pretty subtle. I'm sure, I don't think if we hadn't been meeting with them, we would have picked up on it. Was because of that. But because I think they're also still seeing a fair number of people walking in and family drop-offs and things to that. One of the things I should have noted that when we talk about these facilities, when we give the time frame, that's the average. We certainly have people who stay there longer. So if someone needs to be there 14, 16, 18 days, they do. But to your point, there is a gap in the system. Ironically, Durham has the first program that Alliance developed to help address that. And again, part of the challenge is these are not typically Medicaid-funded services, so we have to put them together. But we have something called I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but it's basically a long-term residential program where we set up apartment type living with 24-hour support. People can stay there for up to 2 years. So someone who's longer term, significant history of mental illness, relapse in and out of the hospital, they can get referred to that program. They get wraparound services, stable housing for 2 years, and then they transition to more permanent supportive housing. But again, I think our Durham program can serve somewhere in the 10 people at a given time. And so I think that becomes a challenge. You can imagine in the city size of Durham, that gets filled up. And that's actually a program that other counties are trying to replicate from Durham. But it doesn't meet the full need. And that's one of the challenges with Medicaid is they don't fund adult mental health residential programs. So they'll do up to 30 days for substance use disorders. But if you have a primary serious mental illness, there's not a residential option. So we have to string together housing vouchers, individual kind of Medicaid definitions where we can do wraparound. So it's a system gap, and it's a challenge nationally. The unfortunate thing about the Healthy Opportunities pilot coming to an end, there was going to be more options for respite and longer term housing options that are now off the table. We'll continue to explore creative ways to do that, but that will be a perennial challenge for us.
Thank you, and I appreciate the conversation that you're having with Duke Regional. And, we have to remember that we have to keep investing in the communication, collaboration, the partnerships. I know COVID, was a wrench, but it just shows with our system that we're seeing problems, and for us to double down and see what's happening, especially around the IVCs, because those folks should be going to Recovery Response Center.
We agree wholeheartedly, and RI agrees. The operator of the Recovery Center knows there's two things that we've selected them for. One is for serving difficult patients who are IVC, and then second piece of that is law enforcement drop-off. They've got a 10-minute rule. If you're not familiar with this, it used to take hours for sometimes for law enforcement to sit there while they go through some process. That they're committed to 10 minutes. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's a little more. When either of those things aren't working, that's a problem for us. So we were surprised to hear that, and it sounds, nothing's easy, right? So it's complication between Durham, crisis, and then we'll help facilitate and get that issue resolved immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and in addition, I feel like we should also, I don't know if y'all are connected with like groups like Legal Aid, and because they are working with a lot of our community members that are at risk, and if they're also getting this out to all of their clients.
Yep. We are connected. Any nonprofit resource, our members would benefit hugely from Legal Aid, particularly those with housing challenges are the ones that we use Legal Aid for.
And I feel like maybe Manager Hager, with like the presentations we just had from DSS and public health, and how the Medicaid and benefits cuts are going to be impacting our Durham residents, that we integrate the behavioral health crisis line more into those communications, because unfortunately, as we see those cuts and families start to struggle more with accessing health care and food, we want them to have as much support as possible.
Yep.
So if we can
definitely
add
do that
to like
yes.
pamphlets or stuff, just make it available.
If you'd like to, and I saw that in Commissioner Jacobs' question, I can be brief on this, but the legislative stuff, of course, is on top of mind for all of us, particularly the Medicaid expansion population, and making sure that those folks do not have that coverage cut from them. The biggest impact for us is around the redetermination. We've got all sorts of staff that we can help with that. Our call center's trained to do that. Everybody in the Taylor plan is eligible for a care manager, so the care managers will be working with them. We have providers, we have the SOAR workers, so we do have some resources that will help with the redetermination. One of the bigger things we're watching is at the state level for us. The department, I meet with them weekly to talk about the federal cuts, what's happening at our local General Assembly. Probably the biggest issue for us, we got two of them. One is the Medicaid rebase. That's money the department needs to continue services. They asked for $819 million to continue services. They were negotiating with the General Assembly. Last week they were approved for $600 million, which was better than any of the offers they got before, but it's still a substantial shortfall for them. So we're watching what the impact of that will be for the department. Again, the department's been very clear. The last population they want to touch is the ones we serve. Those were the greatest needs. But the other thing we're watching too is single stream funding cuts. We thought we were over this. Single stream funding is money we use to serve the uninsured. So if they cut people off Medicaid expansion, the single stream funding would be used to piece something together for that group. You definitely cannot do both if you want any semblance of help for these people who are uninsured. Any advocacy you could do on your part not to cut that money. Now, I will tell you they're going to replace it for a year or two with some mental health trust money, so we should be okay for a year or two. At least that's what's being told, but that's not confirmed yet. But it's recurring cut, and so at some point that's going to start impacting services for people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
That brings us to our final discussion item of the Golden Leaf Foundation Community-Based Grants Initiative. Yes.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners, Manager Hager. I will try to be as efficient as possible to wrap us up. My stomach's already rumbling, so I'm sure you guys are in the same boat. So today, Manager Hager asked me to provide you guys with a brief update regarding an RFP that we recently put out that is not for a county grant or contract, but for a key part of a grant process that is administered by an external foundation, the Golden Leaf Foundation. And so today I want to provide a little bit of an overview of what the Golden Leaf Foundation is, for those who might not be familiar with it. Some information about their community-based grant initiative, which is the specific grant program that they offer that we are currently engaged with, and then some specifics about the county manager endorsement process. That's a key part of their grant making procedure for this particular program, and is kind of what the RFP is set up to facilitate. And then we'll have a brief period for questions. So yeah, just background about the Golden Leaf Foundation community-based grants initiative program. For those who may not be familiar, the Golden Leaf Foundation was established in 1999 by the North Carolina General Assembly to receive and manage a portion of the state's disbursement under the Master Settlement Agreement between states and tobacco companies. This was the big tobacco litigation that happened in the mid to late 90s. A portion of the funding received by the state was set aside to help facilitate the economic transition of the state away from the historical investment and scope of tobacco farming in the state. And so other portions of the funds were put aside for, to address some of the health issues that, decades and decades of tobacco use had created within the states. But this portion of the funding was related to kind of facilitating the economic transition, given the anticipation that demand for tobacco would be decreasing and there would be communities in the state that would need support in identifying other economic pathways in the future. And so the Golden Leaf Foundation's specific mission is to provide support to those communities that are historically tobacco dependent or that are otherwise economically affected by the kind of shift away from larger scale tobacco usage in the United States and to a certain degree across the globe. They engage in a broad range of activities, including grant making, collaboration, innovation, and other stewardship activities for the settlement proceeds with which they have been entrusted. Today we're going to talk a little bit specifically, as I said, about their grant making. The Golden Leaf's signature grant that they operate is called the Community-Based Grants Initiative. They have several programs, but this is kind of their flagship grant program. Annually, they provide these community-based grants to public sector organizations within one of the North Carolina Department of Commerce prosperity zones. And this year, it is the North Central Prosperity Zone, which is the prosperity zone within which Durham County and 14 other counties is located. Each year there's $11 million total to be awarded through these grants, and grants can be up to $1.5 million for a specific individual project. The grants are awarded to basically any public sector organization, so 501c3 nonprofits can apply for these grants, counties and municipal governments can apply for these grants, community colleges, school districts, universities, and other governmental entities are all eligible to apply. The community-based grant initiative, while it is open to a broad range of organizations and it does cover broad geographical areas within the state each year, they only award grants for projects in 3 specific subject areas: job creation and economic investment, workforce development, and agriculture. So it has to be connected to one of these 3 areas to be an eligible project for funding. Through their process, through their solicitations, Golden Leaf encourages and emphasizes applications for projects that accomplish certain things. First is that they meet identified needs in the county. The county is kind of the organizational structure within which they operate their grant program, and so it is important that the grants reflect specific needs in the county, not necessarily identified needs for the county government, to be clear, but just identified needs within that specific county. Projects are limited to operate, individual projects are limited to operating in a single county. So if a Durham County organization applies, their project can only operate within the jurisdiction of our county. They have a separate process for multi-county grants that they make. So these are county-specific grants. It does, again, have to address the 3 priority areas. There is an emphasis on improvement of human and physical capital, specifically that capital which makes the county more attractive for economic opportunity and economic investment. Again, this is about facilitating that economic transition away from tobacco farming within communities across the state. As with many grants, the goal is to focus on projects that have an immediate need, where their funds can be put to work quickly and that are built on previous planning processes. They don't like funding grants for strategic plan development. They want to see shovel-ready, implementation-ready projects with their applications. There are some areas that they will not fund, and I think that's important to emphasize. Specifically, they will not fund projects that support tourism, the arts, or cultural resources. They will not support emergency services. They will not support general social services, and they will not provide funding for general maintenance or operational support. It's not a reimbursement program, so you cannot reimburse yourself for expenses that you incurred prior to the grant award, and you cannot use the funding to replace existing equipment or infrastructure. So if you had something that you wanted to do to one of your facilities, it would need to be an expansion of that facility, not a replacement of your HVAC system that you already have, so to speak. This is kind of a long process, a long and involved process. The grant applications themselves are not due to Golden Leaf until November, with awards not being made until probably February of 2026. So this is not something where we're talking about imminent awards for organizations. We're at least 6 months away from any potential grants being received by anyone within the county. One of the key procedural pieces of the process for Golden Leaf, however, and the reason why we're talking with you all today, is that in order to apply, an organization's project must be endorsed by the county manager of the county within which the organization operates. And county manager endorsements have to be provided to Golden Leaf by September 8th. So we have to make our endorsements, provide them to Golden Leaf, and then there's a 2-month application window where only organizations with projects that were endorsed are able to submit applications for those specific projects. Under the Golden Leaf endorsement process, a county manager can endorse up to 4 total projects with a cumulative funding amount of $2 million, but no one endorsed project can exceed $1.5 million. And they're not going to award more than $1.5 million to a county, period, right? So there's, if we endorsed up to $2 million, of projects, we would not actually receive there would not be the possibility that 4 organizations would receive, funding of up to $2 million. Once the endorsements have been made, the organizations then apply directly to Golden Leaf. So we will not actually have any role in this process after the endorsement process is made. Before moving into the next content, I do want to emphasize that the endorsement process is not intended to be an advocacy process. Like, this is not Durham County advocating for the selection of these 4 projects. This is more of a procedural gatekeeping mechanism that the Golden Leaf Foundation uses to control the number of applications that they receive and have to evaluate each year. it's very important, and it does give us an opportunity to be involved and aware of different projects that are potential ideas for different projects that are going on in our county. But this is not a situation where Manager Hager will be able to write lengthy arguments in favor of funding for these organizations. It is very simple. We fill out a form and we send it to them, and then they work directly with the organizations based on the points of contacts and things that we provide. This is, so I think we've made clear in the RFP, and I want to make clear in this context, and I probably will do it more than once. The county will not be involved past the endorsement phase. We will not. So endorsement does not guarantee any funding from Golden Leaf, from Durham County, from anybody else. This is just a process for us to be able to identify the specific projects which can be endorsed for eventual application to Golden Leaf. So as noted, we have published an RFP to collect proposals from eligible organizations. We will have a panel that will evaluate those proposals and provide the scores and list of recommendations to Manager Hager, who then will be responsible for submitting the endorsements to Golden Leaf by the September 8th deadline. And again, this is, there will be no grant that we issue, there will be no contract that we issue, there will be no funding from the Durham County budget that goes towards any of the projects that we are going to be endorsing. This is just one step in the Golden Leaf Foundation's grant-making process. Again, we did publish that within the eBid system. Proposals are due to the county on August 19th. As we talked about the process internally, for how we wanted to design and approach this unique role that we have in the Golden Leaf Foundation's independent grant-making activities, one of the things that we talked about was the need to focus on selecting projects that have the highest likelihood of receiving funds from Golden Leaf, right? Given what we've talked about today, there has clearly been and will continue to be a massive disinvestment of resources in the public sector of Durham County. And so the important thing for Durham County is that we get as many external resources, even if it's not Durham County receiving the funds. We want to do what we can to increase the likelihood that Durham County will receive some portion of this funding when the grants are eventually made. As I noted, there's $11 million. There's 15 counties in the prosperity zone, 1.5 million total potentially to any individual county. There's clearly the likelihood that some counties are not going to receive funding through this process. And so what we want to do through our process is to prioritize those proposals that have the best chance of eventually receiving funds from Golden Leaf. And we do hope to endorse the maximum number of proposals, the 4, but our evaluation process is going to be heavily weighted in the criteria that Golden Leaf has established for the projects. Not that Durham County's priorities and our values and things aren't going to play into it, but the evaluation criteria for the RFP is rooted very much in alignment with the Golden Leaf organizational priorities and the Golden Leaf competitive criteria that we just shared. Some of the other things that we've established as factors, one of the main ones is the expected impact on unincorporated or rural residents and communities. I do want to clarify that Manager Hager and I attended a county manager specific information session from Golden Leaf, and they made clear during that session that they recognize that some of the jurisdictions within this prosperity zone have larger urban areas, but that historically their grant making tends to be towards projects that provide more tangible benefits for residents that live in rural communities and rural areas. And so, they kind of made clear that the potential impact on those populations was something that was important for them when they're evaluating projects. And so we've incorporated that into our criteria as well, again, to try to maximize the likelihood that we're going to receive funds. But other things we're looking at, demonstrated track record of organizational success. We want to make sure that the organizations that are going to be receiving these funds are experienced, are able to execute these types of projects and achieve the results that they are planning. We are going to emphasize projects that use evidence-based practices. There's been a lot of talk about investing in what works for the county, and so we want to carry that forward in this process and try to make sure that we're focusing on projects that share that emphasis. The timeline for implementation will matter. Again, they want to see projects that are shovel ready. They want to see projects that are not going to have significant lead-in times, and so that is part of our evaluation criteria that we've got identified for this. And then evidence of community buy-in. So we want to make sure that these are projects that have the support of our residents. It might not be something, again, that has come through the county's own public engagement, community engagement processes, but we want to see that these organizations have, that these projects that are being put forward by these organizations have evidence that they have engaged in public engagement and community engagement around these projects, and that this reflects, kind of an evolution of those processes and direction gleaned from those processes. And then finally, we want to look at the proposed budget, make sure there's not anything in there that can't be funded by Golden Leaf. That won't benefit anybody, right? If we put forward a project that includes some of those things that we talked about that they will not fund because they will not get awarded. But then, we also want to make sure we're looking at ways to maximize the number of proposals we're submitting. And so, those proposals that are hitting that $1.5 million mark by themselves might not be within the strategic interest of the county to prioritize, because it limits our ability to submit a larger number of proposals to be competitive for the grant. Again, some things to note: you do have to be a public sector organization to receive this, so we won't be able to consider proposals from private individuals or for-profit organizations. We will not be able to endorse projects that would only serve or benefit residents or communities within the urban boundaries. I do want to emphasize the only serve there. Like, the projects do not have to, it's not that projects are prohibited from serving residents and communities that live within the city limits, but Golden Leaf was clear that those projects would not be competitive, and so we want to make sure the extent to which there are services being provided for residents within the city limits, that's not the sole constituency of a potential project. Again, we're not going to put forward any projects that include activities or expenditures that are not permitted by Golden Leaf. As noted, we're not going to put forward something that's contrary to the policies or priorities of Durham County government. These are not our grants, but we also don't want to endorse projects that don't align with our values and with our policies. And again, within that 1.5 million limit of the allowable cost for a project. We have not, through the RFP, limited the amounts beyond the 1.5 million maximum. But we have noted that we may, if we have 4 great projects and it doesn't fit within the $2 million, there may be some negotiation that we try to engage in with folks to maybe realign the budgets a little bit to see if we can't, still get four proposals within that $2 million ceiling. So that is an overview. Happy to answer any questions. Again, this is, we are kind of stuck in the middle of this process and just trying to facilitate this as efficiently and effectively as we can.
I just wanted to thank John for his support with this. This is a unique opportunity. I'm grateful that the Golden Leaf Foundation has allowed the counties to play a role. It also is tricky being in this seat. There were many approaches we could have taken to evaluate proposals, but we felt it was best to do an RFP so that it was equitable and everyone was aware. And so I do feel that at the end of it, we will have some strong proposals to send forth as recommendations, and those are my remarks. But because this was a unique process, we felt it important that the board hear about it, because I can't recall being involved in this before, and so you may start getting questions, but definitely encourage entities to consider applying, because I would like for us to be one of the ones to get the 1.5 million in Durham, because we could definitely use the resources.
Yes, thank you so much, John, for this. I think for me, my questions are really around, I think since it's our first time doing it, I'm just wondering, like, the timeline seems very short. I'm assuming then for next year and future years, the goal would be to have the RFP out earlier.
Sure.
And giving y'all a longer runway to be reviewing the RFPs and everything and doing that. Is that?
I will make a comment that although our process for review is short, they have Golden Leaf.
Year. Oh,
yes, this year. Golden Leaf started many months ago advertising this step will happen. So there have been lots of entities that have been waiting for this step to happen.
And
so
this is only going to be happening for 1 year? They're not going to have this opportunity next year?
Well, so it'll be for a different prosperity zone. So it will continue to rotate through the prosperity zones. It will come back around for us, right? Like, it's just going to be quite a few years. I certainly appreciate and understand, the concern. It has been a tricky place to figure out. It was not something that we were aware of before they reached out to us to inform us as to the opportunity in the process, and so we have done what we can to try to figure out the best way to do this, and also have had to kind of balance it with a lot of other things going on at the current moment with within the world of grants and other funding issues. So
I think it's great. I mean, thank you for opening up this opportunity. I was just nervous about that short time period. Yeah,
it's not our ideal,
Yeah.
but we have been in communication with organizations that we know would be interested in this opportunity, and they've been aware that we are going to be doing the RFP and have had the opportunity to start working on some of their proposal pieces. And I want to emphasize, like, this is not a full grant application within this RFP, so like the lift is actually relatively light.
Yeah.
In terms of the information we're asking to be provided, and so I do think we've done that, recognizing the timeline is short, and also we don't know what the Golden Leaf application looks like. They haven't provided that to us, and so I don't want people to write a 50-page proposal for Durham County and then turn around in 6 weeks and have to write a whole separate grant proposal for this organization with different questions, different information that they need to provide. And so, we were trying to be very strategic in the lift that we're also expecting of the organizations to respond to this.
Commissioner Britton? Oh, you're good? Okay. Okay. Then I think.
No.
Oh, Commissioner Jacobs?
Well, I feel very lucky that we happen to be in their region that they're focusing on this year. This is definitely the first time that I'm aware that we've ever had this opportunity since it rotates around the state. So it's a little light, as when we're looking at all these funding cuts. I appreciate all the work that you and your team have put into this. It's very, very thoughtful, clear process. So thank you so much. I think I heard you say that Durham County departments can also apply. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And we have for the departments that work in those three primary areas.
Okay.
They're very well aware of the.
Okay.
But they will have to submit a proposal, just like everybody else will. They will not participate in the evaluation process.
Right.
We are going to, ensure there's no conflicts of interest. We're going to do this as fair as possible for everybody. But the city can submit proposals, the schools can submit proposals.
Yeah.
Durham Tech, we know for certain, is going to be submitting a proposal, and we certainly expect at least one department within the county to submit that has expressed an interest in submitting a proposal.
Right, because when you think about the unincorporated part of the county, immediately what comes to mind is soil and water and cooperative extension. Those are some of our departments that work directly with people in those parts of our community, and especially around those areas, job creation and agriculture. I forget what the other one was.
Workforce
Workforce development. Yeah, those are all definitely. And has this gone out yet? Because I know the top.
It's live on the eBid system right now.
Okay.
I mean, it's been live, but it's out there right now.
Okay. So what also comes to mind is whether we're asking our food coordinator, Raina, and also Farmland Board to help get the word out.
Yeah, I've been in contact with Cooperative Extension and asked them to help advertise. I've asked Andy Miracle to help advertise through his network of folks that work in the job creation and economic development and the workforce development pieces. I'm gonna try to do some advertisement through PIO this week, just to make sure that folks are aware. But yes, we're trying to make sure that as many organizations as possible understand that the opportunity is out there.
Okay, because I know Raina has a whole listserv, and then also the Farmland Board. I mean, that's where you have a lot of our local farmers who they know people. So, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, John. Appreciate all your work.
No problem.
That is the end of our agenda then. And, yes, Commissioner Burton?
I just would like to take a point of personal privilege. Today is my father's 82nd birthday, so I wanted to give him a big shout out.
Happy
Congratulations.
birthday to him. Yes. That is a great way to end the meeting. So thank you, everyone. We will see you at our next regular meeting. And there is lunch in the back room for everyone. And then we'll be meeting for agenda prep here. Yeah.